Some stories hit you in the gut before you even realize it. Picture this: an old man, a quiet diner, and a thug who thinks respect can be slapped away. But fate has a funny way of writing its own endings, because when the door of that diner swung open, the thug had no idea who was about to walk in, or the firestorm he was about to face. This isn't just a story about violence or even revenge. It's about loyalty, family, and the kind of brotherhood that only life on the edge can forge. And trust me, once you hear it, you won't forget it. The morning was ordinary, the kind of morning where the hum of a coffee machine mixes with the quiet scrape of forks against plates. Frank Mallory, an 81-year-old veteran of the Vietnam War, sat in his usual booth near the window of Rita's Diner, a place where the waitresses knew his order before he even sat down. He wore the same faded bomber jacket he had kept since the service, the patches almost fraying off but still worn with pride. To most people, he was just an old man who came in for eggs and black coffee. But to those who knew his past, he was something more. A man who had given his youth to his country and who still carried the scars, inside and out. On that morning, the diner door swung open, and in walked a man whose presence instantly unsettled the room. His name was Darryl, a hot-headed drifter who thought intimidation was the only way to command respect. He wasn't just rough around the edges, he was pure trouble. The kind of man who had been kicked out of more bars than he had ever been welcomed into. His eyes landed on Frank, sitting alone, and he smirked. "Look at this old fossil," Darryl sneered loudly, making sure everyone in the diner could hear. "Bet he thinks he's still some kind of hero." Frank didn't even look up. He had faced worse men in jungles halfway across the world, but ignoring a man like Darryl only poured fuel on the fire. With a sudden burst of arrogance, Darryl marched over to the booth and leaned down close. "You still think the world owes you respect, old man," he hissed. Frank calmly stirred his coffee. His voice was steady, but his words cut deep. "Respect isn't owed, son, it's earned." The diner went silent, and in that silence anger exploded in Darryl. Before anyone could react, his hand whipped across Frank's face, delivering a loud, stinging slap that echoed against the walls of the diner. Plates rattled. A waitress gasped. The room froze. Frank's head turned from the impact, but his eyes stayed locked on Darryl with a look of quiet defiance. He didn't flinch. He didn't beg. He just sat there, a living reminder that he had faced death before and wouldn't be broken by a coward's hand. But fate has a cruel sense of timing and sometimes a perfect one, because just then the front door of the diner swung open again, and walking in was a man who would change everything. His boots were heavy, his presence undeniable. He was broad-shouldered, tattooed, and carried himself with the kind of confidence that only comes from surviving too much. This was Jack Mallory, Frank's only son, and riding behind him in life was a brotherhood feared by many and respected by more: the Hells Angels. The second Jack's eyes fell on his father, sitting there with a red mark across his cheek, something inside him snapped. He didn't need anyone to explain. He didn't need words to understand. Rage coursed through him, but it wasn't wild rage. It was controlled, focused, the kind of rage that makes a man deliberate in every step he takes. The thug Darryl smirked at first, thinking Jack was just another stranger. "What? You gonna play hero too?" he spat. But that smirk vanished when Jack stepped closer, towering over him, and the weight of silence filled the room. Jack leaned down just enough so that Darryl could see the fire in his eyes. "That man you just slapped," Jack said in a low, dangerous voice, "is my father." The diner seemed to hold its breath. Darryl's bravado wavered, but he tried to stand tall. "So what? He's just some old." Jack's fist moved like a hammer, catching Darryl square in the jaw and sending him sprawling to the floor. Before Darryl could scramble back up, the sound of engines roared outside, the unmistakable thunder of Harley-Davidsons. The bell above the diner door jingled again, and in walked half a dozen men in leather vests patched with the words Hells Angels. These weren't random bikers. They were Jack's brothers. The atmosphere shifted. Fear replaced arrogance in Darryl's eyes. The other customers sat stunned, some in awe, others in fear of what might come next. But Jack wasn't here to start chaos. He raised a hand, signaling his brothers to hold back. This wasn't about a gang fight. This was personal. Jack crouched down beside Darryl, his voice calm but sharp as a blade. You think it's tough to slap an old man. You think that makes you strong. Let me tell you something. You'll never know the meaning of strength. That man faced bullets, bombs, and nights so dark he wasn't sure he'd see another sunrise. And he still stood tall. You're just noise. Darryl stammered, his confidence completely shattered. He scrambled out of the diner under the watchful eyes of the angels, his pride in tatters. And as the door slammed shut behind him, the room let out a breath no one realized they were holding. Jack turned back to his father, kneeling beside him. You okay, Pop? Frank smiled softly, his eyes misting just a little. Takes more than that to knock me down. But seeing you walk in like that, maybe life still got some surprises left for me. The other bikers gathered around the table, and in that moment the diner wasn't just a diner anymore. It was a battlefield turned sanctuary. Customers began clapping, not for violence but for loyalty, for love, for the reminder that respect and family were things you couldn't fake, couldn't steal, couldn't slap away. As the sun spilled through the diner windows, Frank looked at his son and his brothers in leather vests, and he realized something. Even though time had made him older, even though battles had scarred him, he wasn't alone. His fight, his sacrifices, his very life, they were honored in the way his son stood for him. And that's the message that lingers long after the engines faded down the road. True strength isn't in fists or fear. It's in respect. It's in family. It's in standing up not just for yourself, but for the ones who can't. So the next time you see someone trying to tear another person down, remember this story. Because somewhere out there, a quiet veteran, a loyal son, or an unshakable brotherhood is ready to remind the world what real respect looks like.